everybody, and welcome to the Story Nerds podcast. I am your host, Jessica Kate. I'm the author of Love and Other Mistakes, and today I have a very special co-host, Bethany Turner.
Hey, guys. So excited to be here.
We are so excited. Now, first I should say, Bethany is the author of Hadley, Beckett's Next Dish, and the recently announced soon-to-be book, Plot Twist. Very excited about that. But we're not here to talk about ourselves today. Who are we here to talk about, Bethany?
This up-and-coming author, maybe you've heard of her. Her name is Francine Rivers. Are you kidding me?
When we got the email inviting us to interview Francine Rivers, I was sitting next to my boyfriend on the couch and I was like, oh, we just got this email. You don't understand who she is. This is a big deal.
It's like the big deal. It's like the big deal of big deals.
She's going to be on here in like 3 minutes. We've decided. I've met her once in person. I embarrassed myself. I fangirled all over her. I hope she doesn't recognize me. It was a long time ago. My hair looks very different.
And I was a complete coward and didn't even go across the room to meet her.
We both breathed in the oxygen in the same room before.
We did. We have been in the room with Francine.
But we've decided we need to get our fangirling heebie-jeebies out. Yes. We have like 20 seconds to do it.
Okay.
We'll get them out now, and then we will become.
We're going to be so professional.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. But now we've got our 20 seconds. So ready, steady, go. Oh, we love her so much. Oh, and
like,
this is
I've been
as well. When she comes on, I just want to be like, I don't know how you wrote so many books in such a short amount of time, and they're so long. Look how fat it is.
I know, and it's not like big print. These are not large print editions. There's so many words,
but still.
And still. And every word, so many words, and every one of them is perfection. I mean, it's just, there's not a wasted word in this entire huge, massive thing.
I think what I'm looking forward to is hopefully hearing from her how, like, I've looked at her stuff so much and it just like seems like perfection. I want to hear from her how she's like the same, you know, I'm not hoping she's an insecure mess like the rest of us, but you know.
But she's a writer. She must be, right?
She's here. Hold on. I have to admit her into the waiting room. Okay, hold on.
Okay, we're cool. Shake it off. Shake it off.
We are professional. We are calm. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, you got this.
Alrighty. Hello, Francine. Can you hear us?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you? Oh, wait a second. There.
Hello. We can see you.
All this new technology that I'm learning now that COVID is going on.
We've just been thrown into the deep end on all this, haven't we?
Yes, we have. It's a new way of doing things.
Yes.
It is indeed. But one benefit is that me here in Australia gets to talk to wonderful authors such as yourself on the other side of the world.
That's cool. Yeah.
So welcome. We are very, very excited to have you here at the Story Nerds podcast and excited to chat about all the great new things that are happening with Redeeming Love.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot going on. That's for sure.
There is. Would you like to kick off by telling us about some of it?
Well, the movie finished. We were in South Africa in March. My husband and I, so we were able to see the filming, several weeks of filming. And then we left, and 24 hours before the global shutdown, they finished all the filming. So they've been able to do everything in private studios since then. So the movie is basically finished, ready to go into theaters. We just have to wait and see what happens in 2021.
Wow, that's amazing.
They're still hoping for a spring release in 2021, but so much depends on how the theaters are doing. We have some that aren't going to make it through, with the continued shutdown.
Yeah. I love that even if, I hope theaters make it back and all of that, but they're finding new and innovative ways to get films to people. So I'm still excited about it's going to find a huge audience. And I know every group of people I'm in with, we're all that's all we talk about is, when does the Redeeming Love movie come out?
Well, I know, with church and stuff, we don't meet together anymore. We have a small church and it doesn't have a big parking lot, so we can't meet outside. So everything's live streaming, and movies could be the same way. So just have to wait and see it'll be perfect timing. God's timing is always perfect. So, and he'll show us how to get it out there.
Absolutely.
Very true. Now, I want to wind back for 1 second. It's hard to imagine that there's many viewers who haven't heard of Redeeming Love or are at least somewhat familiar with it. But let's wind up for a second for the one person who may be out there who hasn't heard of the book. Would you like to give us a little bit of background on when it came out and what this, nearly 30-year journey has been with this amazing story?
Well, it came out in 1991. It's actually a story from the Bible, and I could probably talk for an hour just on that. My husband and I didn't become Christians until we were in our late 30s. We actually moved to a town called Sebastopol, and my husband was starting a new business. So he was looking for a place for us to live, because I stayed in Southern California with the kids until the children could finish school. And he found one place right at the last minute for us to move into. And it just happened to be between two Christian families. And it was the little boy, 8-year-old boy, that said, "Have I got a church for you?" So we started going to that church. And we had been involved in a church in Southern California, but Jesus had left the building. They weren't really teaching the gospel. So I just really connected. It just was what I was looking for all my life. And Rick didn't want to come to church, so I asked the pastor if he'd be willing to teach a home Bible study. And he said yes. And Rick said, "That's fine." So we went through the Gospels and various topical studies, and then we came to the Minor Prophets. And it was the book of Hosea that really broke through all my walls. And I felt like I had been writing in the general market for a number of years, but when I became a Christian, I couldn't write for almost 3 years. So I felt like when I read Hosea, we studied Hosea, that God was just opening that up again and saying, "This is the love story I want you to write." And so it's basically in the same genre that all my other earlier books have been in. California, 1840s to 1880s, gold rush period. So that's how it came about. And I'd also I'd read a magazine article in a women's magazine, and I'd seen pictures of this little girl that was, there was a picture of her as a child in like a school picture. And then they had confiscated a pornographic film, and it showed her at the same age, and she was terrified. And then it showed her a couple of years later, they confiscated where they were still searching for this child, and they, about the age of 12, totally different look on her face. She just had dead eyes and very seductive look. So I had those pictures on my bulletin board. And as I was writing that story, I felt like I'm writing for that little girl, wherever she is, whatever's happened. I don't know what happened to her. I felt like I was writing for that girl, for the whole story, to tell her God loves you no matter what, and he can heal you, he can redeem you, he can restore you, if you give him the chance. So that's kind of a capsulized.
I've been wondering, so, I know you, that was the way God told you to write and break through. I know sometimes as writers, like you were kind of alluding to, we don't know if that story is ever really going to be read. Sometimes we just have to write it. But did you have any sense? There's no way you could have known everything that would come, but did you know you had something really special in your hands?
No, I didn't. I know for me, it was an extraordinary experience, because I felt like God was in the room with me, because I didn't have the kind of background Angel had. I had no way of knowing what she experienced, and yet so much of it is going on in her head. So I feel like God was revealing that to me, and I was just studying scripture, studying Hosea, each day before I wrote. And I didn't, it sounds odd, but I didn't make the connection with sex trafficking at the time. I thought I was writing about something that happened 150 years ago, and maybe sometimes, infrequently, it happens now. And it wasn't until a number of years later that I was asked to speak at the International Conference on Prostitution. And there are about 300 people that came from all over the world, and they were very involved in the right up front line fighting sex trafficking. And I remember telling the gal, well, what can I offer? I don't know anything about it. I really don't. She said, you have no idea how this book is used as a first contact with women that are survivors. So it was like, well, that's not me, that's God, how God uses things. He can use anything, even a work of fiction to reach his children. So it's
that's amazing.
An eye-opening thing for me, you know.
Yeah. Oh.
That's amazing. And now the book is finding, you know, new life. I mean, Beth and I were just saying how amazing it is. It's never gone out of print. There's been so many different editions. We were talking about our favorite covers. This is personally my favorite version of the cover.
We both have.
Yes, mine too. Mine too.
Is that your favorite?
It is my favorite. Yeah.
I was so excited.
They tried to bring it to a new audience. You know, people get accustomed to and the original, it was a blue cover, and the Bantam edition. The one I got back, and I was able to do some rewriting in it because I'd grown as a Christian over 8 years, and there were a few things I wanted to take out. There was some language and some more explicit scenes that I was never able to put the conversion scene, which I was able to put into the new edition. So I call the one that you have the redeemed version of Redeeming Love. I got the rights back right away and then was able to rework it. So,
that's
so when was that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it came out in 1991, and then I think it came out again in I want to say 94 or 97. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it was out there for a few years without the conversion scene.
Actually, it was out there for a rather short time in 91,
okay.
And then I had to wait for a certain number of months in order to get the rights back. You know, there's this whole legal thing you have to go through.
Yeah.
And then all the books I wrote in the general market, I have the rights to all those, and they'll never be reprinted because they're not the same message. They're not the message I want out there right now.
Yeah.
And now there's a new edition of the book. There's like extra books that go along with it. Would you like to tell us about those? I think they came out this week, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. The new book, it's a collector's edition, so it's a hardbound, and it's a really nice quality book. And then I have wanted, since I found out that it was being used in ministry, I've really wanted to have a devotional and a Bible study to go along with it to use in ministry. So, you know, some things I'm not great at. I don't know how to do them. So I really, co-authored with Angela Hunt, who's brilliant. She's been a friend of mine for years. She has a PhD in theology. She's a Bible scholar. And then Karen Bursma worked with me on Earth Psalms. So she and I worked together on the devotional, and then Angie and I worked together on the Bible study so we could get those materials out to people doing ministry with traffic people that are survivors, and also battered women's shelters and marriage counseling. It's just amazing how God's used that book.
Wow.
I was really surprised, honestly, that there hadn't been a study or, you know, anything before. But I think, you know, I kept thinking, and then to hear you say it, it's like, it's just such a case, I feel like, again, of the right time.
Yeah.
You know, with so many things happening in the world. It's amazing to see that.
Yeah. Well, people are so much more aware now. I mean, I look back and I think I was so unaware of the things that were going on. So now that the awareness is there are a lot more ministries that are reaching out to the women and men that have been trafficked. So it's good to have those materials. And there's so many ministries growing now. So hopefully they can stop it. That's my prayer.
Certainly. And now you've been living with these characters as, you know, images in your head for 30 years. And now not only is the movie coming out, but I understand you were quite involved with the writing of the movie.
Yes. We had worked with several different companies, and it was men that were writing the scripts, and they just did not understand Michael. They didn't get it, you know. So I felt like, you know, I need to write the scripts. So I was studying up on Final Draft and reading books about how to write a script. And I thought, I just wanted to write the script to show them what I was looking for. I didn't expect that they'd actually use it. You know, so they said, oh, this is, you know, we'll take this one. And then working with DJ Caruso is a really gifted director, and he wanted to restructure. So we worked together. He restructured We worked together on scenes to make them stronger. So the heart of Michael is in there, and Angel is properly shown. It has all the major scenes that people expect to see, but the structure is very different. Because you can't do a linear story online. If you had all that backstory about the abuse of the little girl, I mean, people would be walking out of the theater after 10 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've seen the movie, and he's done a really great job.
That's amazing.
His wife actually read the book. And then I think they were on their anniversary weekend, and she said, "You have got to read this book and make a movie out of it." And he said his wife never says that to him in all the years he's been a director. So he thought, okay. So he read the book and he went, "Oh yeah, definitely want to make this into a movie." Because they're both people of faith too. They're strong Christians. So it's good to have people connected, where even on the set, you just felt a difference because everybody knew this was to glorify God and that Christ was at the very center of the project. And that's what we want to present to the world, is a visual story of how much God loves every person on the planet, and that nothing is impossible to be redeemed,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just have to, while we're talking about Michael a little bit, which this is what I feel like I could talk about for an hour, Francine. Let's talk about Michael. No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he is just such, I mean, in Christian romance, I told Jess, I'm like, I feel like he's the Mr. Darcy of Christian romance. He is our romantic hero. I'd love for you to just talk about him a little bit as a character, and obviously, what he reflects and everything, but also just what is it that we love so much about him?
Well, Hosea was an allegory about God's love for his people. And really, redeeming love is an allegory about the love of Christ for each of his believers. So we're all angel. And Michael is like Jesus and how he loves. I mean, love is not easy, as you see in that story. I mean, she's turning away constantly. And I really identified with Angel when I was writing the book, because I turned to every kind of thing. You're always going to your friends for advice or reading a how-to book or whatever. And it seemed like God was always the last on the list. When you're absolutely desperate, then you send up a shotgun prayer. But with this story, it's to show how passionate he is for us. And I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for that passionate love that lasts forever. It doesn't dwindle and die away. It's a constant, steady, unfailing love. And that's what Michael shows to Angel. And that's what ends up bringing her to Christ. And then she comes back. And it's always a matter of choice. That was the thing that was so important, I think, in the movie too, and in the book, is that it's always up to us to make the choice between life and death. We make the choice to believe or not believe. Yeah.
That's awesome. And now I'd love to hear a little bit more about what exactly was it about Michael that these screenwriters weren't quite getting and that you needed to add in? How did you show that to them?
Well, I think they were looking at him like a normal human man, and the way a man would love, and very, when she turns away from him, they always had him as angry and vengeful and, not kind of holding your grudges. It's like, no, that is not the way God behaves. And that gets her back and goes and gets her back. He's saying, I love you. Love is an action. It's not a feeling. So that was what they were missing, because they were responding to those betrayals as a human man would respond. And in the story, Michael is living out Christ's love in front of her. He's constantly relying on the strength of God to get him through. And it's painful. I mean, the last time he brings her home before she ultimately leaves again and then has to make her own decision, I mean, he's finding her in a brothel, in a room with another man. And yet he's bringing her home and saying, I love you. Love it's painful, but I forgive you. And we're going to start again. And then also I wanted to show that, we tend to, we disrespect God all the time. And we don't think about the fact that God, that he has that heart of love. And I believe that he hurts for his people. He's angry, he's zealous, he's passionate for his people. So I wanted to show that in Michael too. And so much that my hope is that people see the movie and they'll want to know more about the two characters and they'll read the book, because you can't have all that head stuff in a movie.
Mhm.
You're only visually seeing what's happening on the outside, but there's all kinds of stuff going on in the interior of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's what I was wondering about, what that process was like for you to yes, I mean, obviously, you know, every thought that Michael is having and all of that, but the action, I mean, because there were times when Michael is acting in love to her, but he's having to force himself to do it a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was that to translate all that to the screen?
Well, we have a really good actor. That's the other thing. We looked for Michael. We looked and looked for Michael, and so many, you know, I mean, he chooses to be pure in the story. And it seemed like the actors that were really good, they just could not pull off pure. So we found Tom Lewis. Tom Lewis is classically trained from the Academy in London. He's done stage Oedipus Rex on stage. He's a very, very good actor. So when you see scenes with him, you'll see different nuances in his expressions, which, you know, that's what we needed, is an actor that could really do the layers of what Michael is feeling. And also in the book, of course, you've got God speaking to Michael. You see him speaking. You also see Satan speaking to Angel. Well, you can't have that in a movie. It wouldn't make any sense. You'd have this voice coming out of and it would lose people. So the DJ did just a tremendous job of just the hint of it in different scenes. You'll know when God is speaking to Tom and to Michael. And there's one extraordinary scene where the clouds are just literally pouring over the top of the mountains in South Africa. And it's just like you can hear God's voice when you're watching that. You know, that's the scene where God is speaking to Michael. So there are all sorts of creative things that DJ was able to do to show that. So, and of course, there are a few things that are different, that needed to be different, because a visual audience will be expecting certain things that we needed to have in there, like the end of, but I won't tell you.
Oh, that's not nice.
But people will be going, yes, you know.
That's what we want. So what did it feel like? It sounds like you guys were on set. How did it feel watching these scenes play out in front of you when they've lived in your head for 30 years?
Oh, wow. Well, I know that when we first went there and we got to see the set, I mean, they literally built the town of Paradise. And the gentleman that designed it all and built it, he said, well, what do you think of it? And I said, it is so far beyond anything I could have imagined. It was just incredible. They had not just things on the street and the buildings themselves, but inside they had things on shelves in the general stores, and it was amazing. And they built a chapel, a real chapel. And I believe the sets and the chapel are staying there. So they'll be using this in other movies eventually for other films and stuff. So that was really extraordinary. And then just to watch the actors where they have to stay on mark, and then they do a scene, and then they do it from another direction and another direction. They may film it, 6-7 times, and they have to do it the same way. And it really gave me a respect for the actors. And then one particular, Logan Marshall Green plays Paul, and he's a terrific actor. But he had this one scene where he had to eat an apple. And I think they said he ate 30-some apples just for that scene. Just to get that scene right. They said, oh, he's not going to be hungry tonight. He's probably going to be sick tomorrow. And then Famke Janssen also plays Duchess, and she did a scene, and it was very complex. They were explaining to me, very complex, because she was doing all that different things in the scene with her having breakfast, and she had to repeat that over and over again. And then they said, well, we're breaking for lunch. And she said, well, I'm not hungry.
None for me.
No wonder. Sorry, that's the landline. It's like, oh. Anyway.
No. Oh. How
That
long
is
was
very
the filming? How long did
I
the
think the
filming
filming
take?
was
total?
about 5 weeks. So
Okay.
it was, quite long, but tight, for a movie.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, because I'd heard there were other scenes in some of the movies where they have a lot of CGI, and they say they can film up to 4 or 5 weeks just to get one scene for one of those movies. But the entire film was done in about 5 or 6 weeks.
Wow. And now I know this isn't actually the first time a book of yours has been made into a movie, because of course The Last Sin Eater came out back in 2007. How was the experience different between the two movies?
Well, Michael Lannon Jr. and Brian Bird, I think they did a great job, but they had less than $2 million to make that movie. So they did a great job. They couldn't do a lot of the CGI. And then I wasn't involved in writing the script, but I did have script approval, and they did a great job on keeping the story the way it needed to be. Mm-hmm. So it was fun. We were only on that set for about 4 days. It was in Utah. So that it was fun, but being on set for several weeks, that was a whole different experience. And then while we were in South Africa, we were able to go on safari. So did that for about 3 days. That was amazing too. So.
Wow, I bet.
What was the coolest thing you saw on safari?
Lions. I remember this one lion, they radio back and forth, and they have you in this big Hummer or whatever it is. And they were looking for the lion, and they said, well, there are lions over here. So you're driving out there into the grass, and we're looking and looking and looking. And then the sun was setting, and all of a sudden this male lion just sits up in the grass, and he's looking toward the sun, and of course the light through his mane. And I'm thinking, I'm never walking in that grass ever. It was about 8 feet from the vehicle, and we didn't even see it. It was so well camouflaged in that grass. I would have been his lunch. I would have gone right up to him and said, here I am, eat me. It's like, no. So we went through one area, and the elephants were all around us, just kind of walking past us. And
wow,
really something.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Now, a key part of Story Nerds is that we love to nerd out over our favorite things. And so I really wanted to find out, what are some of your favorite authors, books, movies? What's your comfort story that you like to go to?
Oh my goodness. Well, I tend to go to the Jane Austen stories, and I love the movies, so my husband go, oh, that one again, Pride and Prejudice in all of its forms. I really love those. And I my favorite movie, and it did come from a book, is Babette's Feast, which is a really neat story about an artist, and she's a chef. And of course, nobody knows she's a chef. She makes this extraordinary meal at the end. And it just the whole idea that, an artist never is wasted, that, that is always there for you to do, and God will make the most of it always. Yeah. And then Christmas movies, I love, I'm seeing Christmas things. I was out shopping today, and they're already putting Christmas things in the store. And I love The Christmas Carol by Dickens. So that's, I've read that book numerous times, and watching all the variations of the movies. There are like 5 or 6.
Yeah, which one's your favorite? Would you say which favorite Christmas Carol?
I like the one with Patrick Stewart.
Ooh,
my favorite. Yeah.
How about you, Jess? What's your favorite Christmas Carol?
I'm
going with Muppets.
I've never seen A Christmas Carol or anything like it. I think I've certainly heard of it, but I get the feeling it's a lot bigger in America than it is in Australia. So yeah.
Well, we'll have to take care of that.
Yeah, Scrooge. He does such a good job with Scrooge. And then there was a movie out, I think a year or 2 ago, called The Man Who Invented Christmas. And it's about Charles Dickens writing The Christmas Carol. And I so connected with him because he's got the characters following him around everywhere in the movie and talking to him and yammering at him. And I'm thinking, that's what it's like. When you're working on a story, you're dreaming about the characters, you're talking to the characters, and they're always with you in the room somewhere.
Well, that's the perfect segue, because we wanted to ask you a little bit about your writing process.
Okay, well, I start with people. Actually, I back up and I start with a question. Since becoming a Christian and working in the Christian market, I thought Redeeming Love was going to be the only book I wrote and sort of my statement of faith, and that was it. But I had so many questions that were coming up, like, how do I share my faith with unsaved family and friends? And that's what brought about A Voice in the Wind, because I wanted to explore, how do you get to the point and what do you do about sharing your faith? And I don't have the answer. It's just there are different characters are playing out all the different points of view and answers to that question. You have one Christian that's searching for that answer, who was Hadassah. And Hadassah is the kind of Christian I'd like to be. So that, and each book has been a question. That you mentioned The Last Sin Eater. And that really came out of The Atonement Child, which was about abortion and my personal abortion experience, and the difference between guilt and conviction. So the basis of The Last Sin Eater was, the one imprisons you, the other brings you to the Lord for healing and restoration. So it's the difference between conviction in your life and guilt and how those work. Or sovereignty. I was wondering about sovereignty. That was a scarlet thread. But then, once I have that question, then there will be a one character that comes in mind, and then pretty soon there are other characters that come in. But it always starts with that one basis and that one central character, and then the others begin to feed into that. And I make binders, because when I do my research, I need to write everything down, a lot of it in longhand, because it sticks better in my brain. And then I keep that binder. And I'm doing research all through the projects, and then I can kind of flip through and find things when I'm trying to write a scene. I can go back and I can find the materials that I need to find. So it's, and I'm what they call a pantser. I mean, I don't have everything all laid out and planned out and plotted out. It's just the whole story begins to unfold, and I have sort of a general plan, but the publisher always knows that what I turn in as a proposal, that's not what the book's going to look like. I turn it in at the end, because, you have to allow that room for the characters to grow and change. And then God is going to do what he's going to do in answering the question. So you're not really sure how things are going to happen and unfold.
Mm-hmm. I have to admit, I'm shocked to hear that you're a pantser. I mean, when you say it that way, it makes total sense, but you're so rich in research and detail and all of these things that that's fascinating to me that you pants that. I'm just in shock. I mean, that makes sense when you put it that way, though.
Well, and then there are times too when, you get to a certain point in your story and you think, oh, I don't know enough about that, and I need to stop and do the research and fill in that gap in my knowledge. So you do have sort of a general outline that you're going with, and you have to turn in a proposal so the publisher has some idea what you're going to be tackling. But they're very kind to me. They're very kind to me. They go, you just do what God is telling you to do. That's fine. Then we'll work with the editing and all the rest on the other end of it.
So. I'd say you've probably earned their trust at this point. They know they'll be okay with you.
Yeah, and I have a really good editor, Kathy Olson, and I have worked together. My first editor was Karen Ball, and she was extraordinary. We're still really good friends. And then Kathy and I work very well together. So, when you finish a project and you turn it in and they read it, they can see things that, okay, you need a little bit more here. We're fascinated by this character, build this character up. And then typical, they have to, we have to figure out how to cut out 40 to 50,000 words, because I tend to write a big manuscript and then we can cut it down. It's easier to cut than it is to add. So.
Mm-hmm. And your books are not small, even once they have been cut down. So my brain is currently exploding with how fast you must write, because I looked up the year by year of which books you've released. And, Mark of the Lion came out, bam, 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 all a year apart. Those are huge and amazing books. They're about ancient Rome, and they have such research detail into them. How did you do that?
Yeah, well, originally, it was supposed to be one book, and I wanted it to have the classic ending with tragedy at the end. The intention was to have Hadassah die in the arena. Karen was my editor at the time, and she said, if I didn't know you could add to this story, because I had already talked to her about some of the research I'd done that was eye-opening to me. She said, I would have thrown that manuscript across the room. She said, you cannot kill Hadassah. You can't do that. And I had read about how doctors in the ancient world, they could not do dissection to study the human body. They had to do vivisection. So they would study the human body as long as the person was alive, and they would take victims from the arena. So it's a horrifying thing when you think about it. But that's the way Hadassah stayed alive, was the doctor was watching, and she was turned over to him, and he kind of says, I saw how her God kept her alive. I'm not touching her other than to try to heal her. So she becomes Rapha, and she begins to, come into the healing process.
Mm-hmm. So. And I have to say, if I saw any more of your books on screen, I so want like an epic 3-movie series on those books.
Yeah, I think what they'd have to do, I've been approached about that a few times, and I think it would need to be like a mini series on TV or something. I don't think it would work as a movie because there are too many characters in it to get a 2-hour movie. I just don't know how they do that. So we'll see.
This is the age of Netflix. Series. Netflix was built for Mark of the Line to get on screen.
It's meant to be.
Yeah. If God wants it there, it'll be there.
Well, I'll start talking to him about that personally. I think that's what should happen.
Oh, that's amazing. So we have 5 minutes left with you, Francine.
Wow, that's
time flies when we're having so much fun. I'd love to know, I know it's impossible to pick a favorite book as an author, but I'd love to know which one you had the most fun while writing.
Oh, probably the one I'm working on now, which I call my COVID book. Yeah, I read an older book. I had written these books before becoming a Christian, and the last one, I'm looking at the title and I'm thinking, what does that even mean? It just was so ridiculous. And so I read it and I thought, there's not even really story in here. It's just a romance without any real meaning. And I thought, I want to rewrite it because it had so many possibilities of issues and things to be addressed. And the theme really for me for this round of writing it is, can one person impact a community for change? Can we as Christians really impact our neighborhood and our community in a bold way? And it takes place in 1870s in a silver mining town in California. And they were wild and, just lawless places. And she's sent to collect an inheritance. And she finds out that what she's inherited is a Washington hand press, which was an early printing machine for newspapers. So she becomes a newspaper woman.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And I had so much, I'm right at the end. All I need to do is write the epilogue, but I have had so much fun with this because I wanted it to be fun. I think people are under such pressure now with COVID. And here in California, we were evacuated earlier in the year because of fires. We've packed and unpacked several times in the last month for evacuations. So we have the epidemic. So in the book, there is an epidemic, there is an earthquake, there is a town burning to the ground. There are all the things that we've been experiencing in the last year here where we're living are happening in this story. And hopefully with a sense of humor so people will laugh through, just do amazing things even in the midst of chaos. So,
wow,
that's awesome.
The story we need. Thank you for writing it.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I just wanted to have fun. It's like that old song, a girl just wants to have fun, and I want this here. I didn't want to deal with a real heavy duty topic. I wanted to do something that would be lighter. Because people need some lightness right now. They need some laughter in their lives.
Absolutely.
We really do. Now, Francine, I have a couple more questions. I'm sure Bethany does too. The only reason I said 5 minutes was because my Zoom is about to time out. Would you mind terribly if we jumped out and jumped back in and we can just ask you those last few questions without it blinking out on us?
I just technology that we have. It's mind-boggling.
I'm so glad that if COVID had to happen, it was in 2020 and not 2005 when we wouldn't have had Zoom.
Oh yeah, it's really something. I know the kids are all doing Zoom meetings now for school, and we didn't have that. What would the kids be doing for an education?
Oh, that's it. Hard to even comprehend.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Kind of wrecks your social life, though.
That's very true.
We have a Bible study, and it's been going for over 30 years, and we still meet because we talked to the people and said, do you want to still gather? And they said, yes, please. So we've kept it going the whole time. We haven't shut down we figure it's a small church in our home.
Yeah. So, okay. So this Bible study that you've had for over 30 years, this is the Redeeming Love Bible study that was studying Hosea. You're still together?
Yes. And we've moved from Sebastopol to Windsor to Santa Rosa. We lived up in Fountain Grove. That's all gone. That whole community was burned to the ground. And then we live over here in Western Santa Rosa. So 4 different homes, but the same Bible study. And we've had people, people have moved away, people have passed away. We've walked people through cancer and all kinds of things. So, but we're still together. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That is truly. I'm like, I think there's a story in that.
Really, I think that's the way the church originally started, was small groups and homes. Yeah. So, although church is not able to meet, we still meet. So we have a continuance there. Continuity. That's the word I was looking for.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Well, I have a question. I am going back to sort of the writing process, but more than that, well, I was joking with Jess about the way I was going to ask this question, which was, do you know that you're Francine Rivers? But what I mean by that is when people hear there's a new book coming from you, there's great anticipation, is there a pressure in that, or is that just not something that enters your mind?
It's not really something that enters my mind, because each project I'm working on, I'm basically trying to find answers for myself. And I'm not on social media very much. I mean, I have a website, but I don't manage my website. My daughter actually goes through mail and takes care of that. My agent oversees a lot of things. The publisher oversees the website. So I'm not really involved in that way. And it insulates me, because then I can really focus on my writing and just focus on what does God want me to do next, and what is God teaching me as I do it. But I know when I go to a conference or something, and somebody will walk up and go, "Oh, you're Francine Rivers," and it's like after about 10 seconds they realize, "Oh, you're just like everybody else," because I am. I certainly don't get any special kudos from my kids or my grandkids. People say, "Well, how do you identify yourself?" Well, I'm a wife of almost 51 years, and we have 3 children. They're married, and we have 5 grandchildren. So that my identification is through that family life and the friends that we know. So yeah, it's almost like a separate person in some respects.
Yeah.
And then when they talk about certain books, I feel like, well, God, people often will come up and they'll say, "I learned this from your story," and I'll think, well, I didn't really put that in there. So that's how God used that story in their life, that, God can reach them and talk to them in unique ways that have nothing to do with me. It's just how God uses something.
Wow.
That actually leads to one of the questions I was wondering about. Do you have any favorite stories about reader feedback like that, hearing about how God may have used it in someone's life?
Well, not offhand, but what really has touched me a lot is people tend to write to me, especially with Redeeming Love, and they'll share their whole story. And I usually write back when it's a personal story that they're sharing like that, but I never keep them, because I feel like those are so personal, the sharing that they're doing and the trauma and some of the pain that they've experienced. It's like to read and to encourage and do what you can, and then delete so nobody else can ever take a peek into that life. But that's really been something for me. And I think that God is just reminding me that, whatever we do, whether you're a writer or whatever you do as a profession, we are an ambassador for Christ. And if we're doing everything for the Lord, as though for the Lord, we are impacting lives in ways that we just can't even imagine.
Yeah.
We don't see it necessarily, but it's going on all the time.
Yeah. And it is just so exciting, I think, with the movie coming out. And I mean, I'm going to point out what Jess said a little bit ago. It's like she was born the year Redeeming Love came out.
Oh, wow.
Well,
it's nice to know the younger generation is reading it.
I read it when I was 13. I've grown up reading your books.
And I think that's such a remarkable thing about these stories, just like you're saying, someone got something that you didn't necessarily put into it, but God put into it. And I think there's also something about generations and reaching different generations. And with the movie coming out, there really is that. It's like, it feels like it's about to hit a whole new one. And that's just so exciting.
Well, and I think it's because every generation craves that love that they can only get from God. They can only get it from Jesus Christ. And they're hungering for it, they're looking for it, but they don't really know sometimes what they're looking for. It's just that emptiness. And I see this, especially in our culture, sort of the hooking up generation, where the relationships are so shallow, and yet they're broken. I mean, they're breaking hearts over and over again, and they're looking for something, but they're looking in the wrong place, and they're not finding what they seek. And I think they're really seeking an eternal love.
Yeah.
So. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Francine, I would love to know, I mean, all writers know that different parts of writing are really hard. Which part do you find comes the easiest, and which part do you find is the most challenging of your writing process?
Oh, I think starting. That first page and starting a project is the hardest thing to do. And it's so rough. It's like if you haven't exercised for a long time, you have a tendency to just be achy and your muscles are sore and all that. Well, it's the same thing with writing. You have to get into the groove, and you have to do a little bit of it every day and keep practicing. And my husband taught me this. It's that, the mouse that ate the elephant. If I thought of writing a book, I'm writing a book, I would never start. It would just overwhelm me. But I can look at it as, I'll do 3 or 4 pages today. And then by the end of the year, I'll have a body of work that's finished. If I keep that central question in mind, keep that walk with Christ for the main character in mind, you're just walking with that character through that whole year. But starting is really the hardest. And I don't have to worry about negotiating, because I have an excellent agent. I worked with Jane Jordan Brown for 25 years, and she died of brain cancer. And when she was in the hospital, she was concerned about my career. I'm going, Jane, you're about to meet your maker, But she wanted me to work with her protege, and I said, absolutely. And I've been with Danielle ever since. And Danielle is somebody, I just trust her with my career. So I just hand her the manuscript, and I don't have to worry anymore. And I know that's not true of all authors. There are a lot of authors out there that have to do all their own marketing. They're doing indie publishing online. They have to do everything, designing covers, editing, everything. So I feel blessed that I don't have to do that, that I've worked with the same publishing house my entire career, with the exception of Redeeming Love, which was a little too rough for Tyndale House at that time. But Tyndale has the Spanish edition, which they're publishing. So that was with Waterbrook Multnomah, that's now Random House. But all the rest of the Christian books, not the BC books, we don't count those are gone. All the rest have been with Tyndale House. So I have a wonderful agent there. They're a family-owned business, and it's been a wonderful almost 30 years with them.
Wow.
So that's different from a lot of authors are going to different publishing houses, or they're multiple publishing, you know, they have several books going. I have one at a time. I have the time that I need to write it. And I'm working with the same people I've worked with for years. And that's unique and very special. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So you were telling us about the story that your COVID book. Does that have a working title that you would share with us, or is it still?
Well, my working title is The Disinherited, because just about everybody in the book is disinherited for some reason. And of course, you find your inheritance in Christ. So they've all been cast out. They're all searching for something. They're, you know, like the gold rush, there are people flooded in from all over the world, and they were looking for quick riches. They were looking for home. And this is the same thing. And she's looking too. I mean, she's a Christian when she gets there. She's an on fire young Christian woman of about 18 to 19 years old. And she's, you know, as 18 and 19-year-olds can be, she has all the answers to everything.
Of course.
And she's one of very few women in this town, because and there's a whole story. She thinks she's inherited it from her uncle. Her uncle is the one that was the newspaper man, but there's a whole story, mystery there. So she's come to this town, and she's been raised as a lady in a wealthy family on the East Coast in Boston. And so now she finds herself in the middle of this pit, muddy streets and wild people and gunfire going off and no law and order, no sheriff or anything. So, and she sets about to get things right. So I had a lot of fun with it.
Well, I'm so excited to read it. I'm sorry, I'm like, I know that we have other things to talk about, but I kind of just want to be like, okay, go on. Tell me more about the disinherited.
Well, and the lead character, you know, she's a strong Christian woman, and she, you know, she knows how she wants to live her life. She's living her life according to God's word. And the man that's the romantic man in the picture, he owns the saloon across the street. He was cast out of his home in the South. His father was a pastor in the South and had a slave, and he was part of the Sherman March to the sea. So he was a Southerner who fought for the North, and actually was part of that sweep through the South. And so when he goes home, he's hated and he's cast out. And his father basically tells him, "I wish you were never born." You know, so he goes west to find answers, and he has, you know, he's lost his faith, you know, so they're all kind of lost souls. And then she comes.
Oh.
Yeah.
And when can we expect to see this?
I'm hoping.
Okay, I had to try.
Yeah, I'm hoping to turn in the finished manuscript by the end of October, my agent. And then I know that right now the publisher doesn't really have time to read it, because they've got a lot of the other books on their docket that they need to go through. So I'm thinking at least a year, probably after the movie comes out. You know, it'd be the following, probably, I'm guessing 2022 is when this book would come out.
Okay.
It takes a long time to get a book into production and printed and all that.
It does.
That it does.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be worth the wait. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Francine, I'd love to hear any advice that you have for young creatives out there, or new creatives. They might not be young, but maybe they're turning to their creative career for the first time.
Well, I usually tell people, write the book you need to read. And that's just it in a nutshell. You know, whatever it is, you know, just tackle it. And you can learn the craft of writing. You can learn about genre. You can take classes and all that, but you have to have that passion for the work. And I think if you are writing something that is speaking to your soul and what you're going through in your own quest, that's what you need to write, and it'll keep you going. So write what you need to read.
Well, I need to read one, but you're already writing it, called The Disinherited. Sorry, I tease. I'm just very excited.
Yeah.
And I think the last question on my list is, what fills your creative well back up?
Well, time away. When we lived up on Fountain Grove, we didn't have a big backyard, and as a child, I hated weeding. I hated it, all that stuff. We have about a third of an acre on the place that we have now, and when we moved in, this is a fixer-upper. So we've been working on the house for the last 3 years, and I've been working in the garden. Whoever laid it out really had a beautiful plan, but it also has 100 grapevines. So I've been managing and literally working in the grapevines in the vineyard, learning about pruning, learning about thinning shoots, learning about harvesting and all that stuff. And I have really had a great time. And replanting, clearing, cleaning. So it's been quite a process. We have a gentleman that comes in who he has worked in vineyards for over 50 years, and he came just for fun to teach me, with another friend of ours from the Bible study, of how to do pruning and explaining it all. So he figures in the next 3 years we'll have the equivalent of a professional vineyard. It'll all be the way it's supposed to have been from the beginning. And he's watching me and grading me, because I'm out there weeding and I'm taking the suckers off and I'm, applying what he's teaching me. But there's so many spiritual lessons in a vineyard and in a garden. That's been quite the process. And then we don't drink, so we're not making the wine. We found a couple over in Fairfield, and they came recently and they harvested almost 700 pounds of grapes off of our 100 little vines out there. So they'll make wine out of it, but that's a whole nother process. So, but we just said, I just want to handle the vineyard, and then somebody else can make the wine and do something with the grapes. I don't want to have to throw the grapes into the garbage. We didn't know what they were. We thought Pinot Noir, but we're thinking that they're Merlot. So we weren't even sure what variety of wine grapes they were. But they very, very definitely are not table grapes. They're not grapes you'd want to eat. They taste like wine.
I did not know
like
that.
Wine, you'd like the grapes.
I know. I guess I didn't know that either, Jess. I'm just thinking, wow, I didn't know there was any difference.
I just thought they took grapes.
Yeah, well, and they're all different varieties, and we live in the wine country, so they're all different types of grapes that are being grown here. And then, it's a fascinating process. And I get in this, it almost looks like a Martian suit to go out there and spray against mildew, and you're checking for bugs, and there just really are a lot of lessons out there. We have to be pruned. We have to be thinned out. You can't take on everything. You need to pick and choose the best things that God has for you to do, the ones that He's calling you to do, and not all the busy things that keep you distracted and that suck away the life out of you. It's been really interesting and informative, and helping me to make decisions about my writing too.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to see a character in a future book who runs a vineyard and learns lots of things from it?
Possibly, yeah.
That's too good not to.
We also have 2 olive trees, but I haven't figured out. Now that's another whole thing with the olive press and all that. So that's off in the future.
Once you get the vineyard up and going. Well, I think the only other thing I wanted to ask is, I think I'd be greatly amiss if we didn't ask about Ranger.
Oh, Ranger. Ranger. I dearly love him, and then there are days where I could just strangle him. He's only 5 months old, so he's basically in his teenage period right now. So everything he learned earlier, he's now forgotten. I'll call him and he'll look at me like, I don't want to come. I don't want to come. Come get me. So we are enlisting the help of a professional. because my husband has Parkinson's, and he is at 5 months, he's 51 pounds. So he will be about 120-pound German Shepherd when he's finished growing. And we need to have him very well trained so he doesn't knock us down. He loves me, he's bonded to me. So he wants to leap on me when I come in the house. And, you know, he's already pretty powerful. So I take him out for walks and he does really well. He's learned a lot of skills, but he has a few more to learn before he settles down. They say about 2 years, and then they're over their puppy stage. But I mean, he's a delight. We just look at him and he makes our heart feel good. But he is a challenge. He reminds us of raising kids.
They are like kids, huh?
You have to be diligent. Yeah.
Just wow, a 51-pound puppy though. I'm just trying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, man, my sister has a dog, but it's like a miniature poodle cross thing. It's literally this big.
Little different, not as much knocked over.
It will never be a lap dog, that's for sure. Although he'd like to be a lap dog, it's like no. But there are certain things that we want. He likes people. He really likes people, and he likes other dogs. We have 2 dogs on one side and another dog on the other, and he runs the fence with them. They really like each other. He's friendly. The dogs want to take him out on walks, so that's all good. We have 4 German Shepherds, and they have not all been that way. Some can be very aggressive and very protective, and he's protective, but he also interacts and does well. So we've done a lot of socializing with him and intend to continue. We want him to welcome people into the house. You know, if we welcome them in, we want them welcomed in. So if we haven't welcomed him in, then we want him to be the guard dog.
Yes. Yes. Learn the role.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us today, Francine. It's been wonderful chatting to you. Now, if people would like to learn more about Redeeming Love, the movie, your many, many other wonderful books that they can read, where should they find you online?
www.francinerivers.com. Everything should be on the website. And I think there is a Redeeming Love film on Facebook. There's a Facebook.
There is.
For the movie. And so there will be information on there and updates. And I think they're doing some what they call sizzles, which are little films on what was actually happening on set to give you, you know, interviews with the different actors and seeing the sets and that kind of thing. They were a lot of fun to see.
That's awesome. I think there's even a Redeeming Love Facebook page that I saw in my research that's got about 250,000 people following it. So jump on there, people.
Okay.
If you want all the latest updates. That's wonderful. Bethany, if people would like to find out more about you, where should they go online?
They can find me at www.cbethanyWright.com, and I'm also cbethanyWright on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
Wonderful.
And Jessica, if people want to find you, where should they go?
People can find me at Jessica Kate Writing. It's jessicakatewriting.com or just at Jessica Kate Writing on social media. And if you would like to follow the Story Nerds podcast, we are online at storynerds.podbean.com or at storynerdspod on social media. So hop on, follow us, and listen to more amazing interviews.
Well, thank you very much, ladies. This has been fun.
Thank you so much.
What time is it in Australia right now?
Right now, it is 9:01 in the morning on Saturday.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's always fun lining up my time zones with everyone else. It's a lot of maths to be done. Thank goodness for Google.
Yes. Yeah.
Radio.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you and visit with you and chat with you about all this.
Very nice to meet you too also. God bless you guys.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.